Let me quickly introduce Tushar Gupta, Swapnil Kothari and Lokesh Jindal. All of them are joining us here on the broadcast. Very important, Swapnil, because we have been talking about the political implications. We'll get to Lokesh Jindal for that. But if we talk about the legal implications here, because when the petitioners, while arguing in the court, had said that the court should actually lay down the law for the future so that similar misadventures are not repeated by the future governments. This had they been saying that demonetization cannot be repealed. It cannot be taken back. But such future incidents of demonetization should be avoided. That has been the contention of the petitioners.
Well, the petitioners are fully empowered to contend anything that they want to, but at the end of the day, it is the decision of the court which comes into play, and that is exactly what the Supreme Court has done. The Supreme Court has clearly sent out a message that just as they have the power to give out judgments, likewise the executive and the legislature have the powers to come out with an administrative policy or a legislation. Now, as far as Justice Nagaratna's dissenting view is concerned, I beg to differ with due respect with her, that this should have been by way of legislation, or if secrecy was needed, by way of an ordinance. 26(2) of the RBI Act is clearly empowers the RBI to come out, but also it does not detract from the fact that the centre, under entry 26, if I remember the entry number correctly, as far as coinage and monetary policy is concerned, that is completely within the powers of the centre, as we call it, the central list. Now, as long as any constitutional parameters are not transgressed, the centre is fully within the power to come out with a 20 rupee coin, with a 10 rupee coin, with tomorrow even with a 50 rupee coin, even if it feels that today the value of the money is coming completely to a very little value as such as to what you can buy with a 20 rupee or a 50 rupee. So that likewise that you can come out with a 500 rupee note or a 1000 rupee note to be taken off the radar, and of course it came back with a new 500 rupee note. All of this is within the prerogative of the centre in consultation with the RBI. So it's not that the RBI, the topmost bank, was not consulted. So to say that if, yes, RBI would not have been consulted, then the decision of the centre would have perhaps been flawed, or I would say it rather arbitrary, to use legal words, or disproportionate, and hence running afoul of Article 14 of the Constitution, which is the Equality Clause, and would be struck down as not meeting as violative of that particular very sacrosanct fundamental right. Now, given that it was in consultation with the RBI, it's not something which was out of the whim of the Prime Minister. Obviously, this decision is absolutely correct. So, to that extent, Justice Nagaratna's dissent is perhaps a little bit flawed, in my opinion.
All right.
As far as the 4:1 ratio is concerned, I'm not at all surprised with it. To say that it is an academic exercise, yes. I mean, after 6 years, you're not going to undo that.
So one dissenting but four concurring point of views as we are looking is the verdict that is out. But Tushar here, when it comes to Justice Nagaratna holding that there was no independent application of mind by the Reserve Bank of India for demonetization, further going on to say that the exercise was carried out in merely 24 hours.
But that's what demonetization is supposed to happen. I mean, what does the justice want? For an advance notice to be given out to everyone a week in advance, and then the demonetization should happen? Look, the nature of the policy was such that it had to be carried out in secret with the consultation of only a few stakeholders. You cannot be holding a public summit and say, okay, we are planning to do demonetization, and then announce it. I just don't understand the contradictory opinion. I understand there is criticism to demonetization, even after 6 years, and that's all right. I personally believe that the policy was a success. In 2017, the electorate of UP, a state of 200 million people, believed it was a success. In 2019, the people voted back the government. And talking about the future demonetizations, if at all they happen, let's understand one. For any government of the day to do demonetization is also political risk. It's not something that can be just done as an administrative policy every year or every 5 years or even every 10 years. It's not that simple. So for the government to do demonetization, it's a political risk, which this government took. They fared well, and it's happened, and people have had their successes. Some people have had their failures. The criticism is all fair. But to say, oh, it was done in 24 hours, the RBI did not have any independent consultation or independent application of mind, that's all a little naive.
But so far, mixed reactions that have been coming in. Let me also bring in Lokesh here, because Lokesh, what the petitioners who were, Mr. P. Chidambaram was appearing for them, had contended that the objectives of the demonetization as mentioned by the government were false and could not have been and continues to not be achieved by demonetization. The court has said whatever has really come out of it doesn't matter, but the entire decision of demonetization cannot be questioned.
Yes, certainly. If you look at the procedure that was followed as per law, the government might be right, but what was the impact of the demonetization? Right now in 2022, the amount of cash in circulation is almost twice. I mean, it is about 32 lakh crore, whereas prior to demonetization, it was somewhere around 17 lakh crore. The point is there is more cash in circulation, there is more black money in circulation. What has happened is the demonetization, it impacted certain informal sectors negatively. I mean, the growth rate, which was above 6-7% came down to 1.8%. The point was this entire exercise, it harmed the economy more than it benefited the economy. It is although they might have followed all the due processes, all the legal aspects which entitled them to undertake such a decision, but it was a bad policy. I would say bad economics and bad politics. The court could have taken a more reformed view. However, honorable court and its wisdom is to be respected, being the citizen of the country. But I wish that there could have been a more reformed insight into this entire aspect, considering what was the outcome of this entire exercise.
All right. I believe we have more opposition reactions that are coming in, mixed reactions more or so that are coming in, because they have been questioning the Modi Sarkar on the decision that was taken back in 2016. Let's listen into the TMC.
What was expected is that it is impossible, almost very difficult to expect that the Honorable Supreme Court would nullify the whole exercise. But if Supreme Court does so, it would create a chaotic situation. Because for 6 years, the notebandi or the demonetization has been in implementation on the ground. People have been using the fresh issued notes, currency notes, and the banned notes have disappeared from market. Demonetization of 8 November as null and void, then it would make practically a chaotic situation.
All right, reactions that are playing out from the opposition side, but Swapnil, just help us understand and to elaborate to what Lokesh has been saying, because the Supreme Court previously had said that it has the power to examine the manner in which the decision for demonetization was taken, adding that the judiciary cannot fold its hands and just sit because it was an economic policy decision. However, the court's remarks came at the time when the RBI Council made the submission that the judicial review cannot apply to economic policy decisions.
Mr. Lokesh has his point of view from a political perspective, and he's entitled to his view. Amita, my view is very simple. When it comes to the court is bound to look at the constitutional parameters, whether they've been followed, whether it falls within the prerogative of the center, whether it was a bad decision, good decision, what sort of impact it had, whether it needs to be repeated, not to be repeated, is an entirely separate issue. It does not, augur well for the courts to get into that terrain at all, because then it amounts to the judiciary's breach into the executive domain, which I would very much want not to happen. Likewise, if I don't like executive interference to the judiciary, likewise, I do not want even the judicial interference into the executive decision making. Now, this is very clear that the judicial review is a part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Any decision, whether it's taken by the center or by the state or by any state authority, assuming that it was only an RBI which would have come up with this decision.
Now, Tushar, this is what Mr. P. Chidambaram, who was also appearing for one of the petitioners, had to say, because he is more focusing on the dissenting verdict that has now come from Justice Nagratna. But what Mr. Chidambaram had said in court, talking about the convention, saying a move that can be drastic and have those consequences on the country must be first recommended by the RBI Central Board and then be deliberated upon by the Parliament of the country.
No, that's not entirely how it works. I understand why the Congress would want to hold up that minority judgment in the face of the public to score some political brownie points. But at the end of the day, Chidambaram is wrong. Why is no one ready to understand the nature of demonetization altogether? If the government's intent is to fight counterfeit currencies, black money, terror financing, they cannot have it being deliberated in the parliament. And Lokesh Jindal here was pointing out, we have the same amount of cash in circulation. Why is no one looking at the number of UPI transactions? Why is no one looking at the amount of GST returns we're having digitally every year? Why is no one looking at the traders, the MSMEs that are now moved on digitally? They have replaced it with the cash transactions. So look, a lot is happening on the ground since the last 6 years after demonetization. which the people need to factor in. Chidambaram here wants the parliament to deliberate the demonetization before it happens. But if you're giving people like the terrorists or anyone using counterfeit currencies the advance notice, the entire purpose of demonetization gets defeated. So at the end of the day, one has to back the government in the manner in which they carry out demonetization. I do not say there was not inconvenience for the commuters or for the lower income groups. There was. But at the end of the day, the electoral verdict suggests they have backed the government, and today even the Supreme Court has backed the government.
No, but Mr. Jindal, what the government was trying to achieve, has that been done? Because the Supreme Court has been saying that whatever the results might be, but when it comes to the decision that was taken and was applied to, isn't wrong.
See, when the decision for demonetization was taken, has the government taken due consideration that there is availability of digital financial infrastructure or not, whether people are having some form of digital payment mechanism, whether there is some form of a means available so that the moment people are deprived of cash, how will they undertake their day-to-day life? Come on, 52 days, you cannot...
No, but that objective would have it been achieved if the people actually knew what's going to happen?
Let me complete.
No, would that objective would have been, achieved if the people knew what's going to happen, especially those who were dealing with counterfeit currency and in black money?
The point is the government could have done something about the digital infrastructure. It was only after the demonetization that the government started coming up with Paytm, BharatPay and all these forms of platforms. Prior to demonetization, you may check on record, were these forms of platforms being used widely by the people?
No, Tushar, I believe you have a differing point of view, but let me go back to Swapnil on this. Swapnil, just help us understand legally, when the advocate has been saying that the judicial review cannot be applied to economic policy decisions here, what does it mean?
Well, that's just a sense of argument that you want to say. Initially, it's like, we always have these preliminary arguments where we say that the court is not empowered to deal on this issue at all. And then eventually we tell the court only has to decide whether it's empowered or not. Now, to say that as far as economic decision-making of any executive or legislature is concerned, the court is not empowered to look upon it or to have a review of it, that's absolutely inappropriate, because judicial review is a part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Every single thing that the executive or the legislature does has got to come under judicial scrutiny. Now, to what extent the judiciary wants to intervene or interfere in the decision-making process is a separate issue altogether, and the Supreme Court is not perfect. It can even err at times. Here it hasn't. Here it has taken a backseat. It has said that, sorry, we're not going to get into all this nonsense. These arguments which are there between the BJP and the Congress can take place on a separate platform, and they can take place for as long as the period until the cows come home. So the point is that the judicial review is a part of the basic structure. I'm only trying to say, as an advocate of the economic policies, or rather, as a votary or as an opponent of the demonetization, to say that, by the way, the judiciary should not interfere.
Well, talking about different point of view and perspective, I believe, Tushar, you are differing here as well from what Mr. Lokesh has to say, because earlier, when it comes to Justice Nagratna had clarified that the court will not go into the merits of the decision, but it can only examine into the manner in which the decision was taken.
Look, I'll just go beyond the legal jargons and the legal mumbo-jumbo. What the opposition essentially is arguing is that the government carried out demonetization, it's fine. The Supreme Court backed it, it's fine. The electorate backed it, it's fine. What we wanted the government to do was to plan it in advance, give us a public notice, deliberate in the parliament, and then carry out the demonetization. My simple answer to that is, had the government done that, then why do you need demonetization? Because the very people it was trying to catch, it was trying to get hold of, it was trying to mark in terms of the money financing and the entire money network, they would have got the free pass, they would have got the leverage, they would have got
what did you achieve from demonetization?
Sir, go on the ground, talk to NSCPs.
Inform me, enlighten me.
I mean, you need to go on the ground to understand
what did we achieve by demonetization. No, sir, please. I mean, I'm really eager to know how did we benefit from demonetization? Can you please enlighten the entire
if you were right, Lokesh Jindal, if you were right.
All right.